right, I'm gonna share my screen. And I will warn that when I do this and put it in presentation mode, I have a very hard time seeing anyone or seeing the chat. So I would just ask that people, if you've got a question or comment, please feel free to jump in at any point. Go ahead, come off mute, let me know, because I don't want to miss anybody just because I can't see. For those that don't know, I'm Andrea Wilkins. I'm the legislative liaison with LWVCO. And tonight we're doing our annual legislative wrap-up presentation where we kind of give you an overview of some of the highlights of the session from our perspective. And I wanted this year to try and pay particular attention to some of the outcomes and give you some of the stats around action alerts and things like that. So hopefully all of this will be useful information to you. I will say that the information that I've got included here does not focus heavily on a lot of the legislation that LAC covered. So if you are interested in more in-depth information on specific bills or categories of bills, please feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to chat further, or I can put you in touch with the LAC lobbyists that are really the experts in their area. So just a little note about that. I'd like to start by thanking everyone for attending, thanking the LAC for their tremendous amount of work this session, and thanking Maud and Linda for their leadership and so all the support and work in their role as co-directors of Action and Advocacy. I'll be calling on Maud and Linda at certain points in the presentation to kind of jump in with some added detail. But for now, let's go ahead and kick off our slides. Okay, so a little look at the numbers here. The LAC followed a total of 125 bills this session, which is actually pretty comparable to what we tend to do year after year. We usually hit somewhere in the 100 to 120 range. I would say maybe we're kind of at the upper end of where we typically are. But some of that is due to the fact that the capacity of the LAC has really grown in the last couple of years. We now have over 35 citizen lobbyists, which is fantastic because that allows us to advocate and follow bills in a very broad range that follows the categories in our program book, and to really weigh in on a lot of the pieces of legislation, either in the form of testimony, oftentimes in the form of suggested amendments, things that we think can be done to make the bills better, sometimes opposing bills, or just kind of having conversations to get our perspective out there, serve an education function, and make sure that our membership is apprised of some of the thinking behind some of the measures. So there's a whole lot of activity going on within LAC, and that's reflected in the high number of bills that we followed and actively lobbied on this session. Of the 125 bills, we supported 87. And when we look at where everything ended up, 79% of those were passed and signed by the governor, or if they're not quite signed, they will be soon. So we had a pretty high pass rate. I don't remember exactly how that compares with last year, but I think that's probably close to where we typically are. But for the most part, we're pleased with the focus of the legislation, and there were a lot of bills introduced this session that aligned with our positions and really helped to take us closer to where we want to be on a lot of the topics covered by our organizational positions. Of the bills we opposed, there was a total of 17. Again, this is kind of a reflection of, by and large, a lot of the theme and direction of a lot of the bills was pretty consistent with our positions, but there were some that, we either opposed or in a few cases strongly opposed. And we actually saw pretty good outcomes where this was concerned. Of those 17, 14 failed. Another was vetoed by the governor, and we will get into a little more detail on that in just a bit. But as you can see, of the bills that we were hoping would not progress, only 2 did. So we're pleased about that. And then we pushed hard for amendments on a few bills, but of those, there were some where the amendments did not make it into the bill. We didn't change our position from amend. We felt like the bill could have been better in another form, and we just weren't willing to fully get behind it in the form that it was in without those amendments. We were very vocal about, really communicating to the sponsors and providing testimony as to what we felt like the amendment should be. But in a couple of cases, we were not able to get that to move forward. So our hope is that we provided some really good food for thought on a couple of the amendments that we felt should have happened. Particularly coming to mind for me are a couple in the voting and elections realm, dealing with vacancy committees and county commissioner elections. Let's see, let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. You may have noticed this year that we really issued a lot of action alerts. LAC was really active in this regard, following legislation closely that we either felt really strongly about and wanted to make sure that we were pushing hard to see the outcome that we wanted, or in some cases kind of really tuning into bills that we were a little bit worried about and felt like could use that extra push. So there's a couple of reasons that we would issue action alerts, those kind of being like the main things. And I wanted to provide just sort of a list of bills that we issued the action alert on, with the information that you'll see in parentheses on the slide. The first indicates the LWVCO stance, and then after the slash there, you'll see what happened with the bill. So, for example, in the case of the Colorado Voting Rights Act, we actually issued several alerts on this as the bill moved through the legislative process. We were very supportive of this bill, and ultimately it passed. Of the bills that you see here, these are all on these are bills that started out in the Senate. And for the most part, we had pretty good outcomes. The bills, by and large, ended up passing or not in alignment with our positions. Senate Bill 3, dealing with a ban on semi-automatic firearms and rapid fire devices. That's a bill that we supported. It ultimately passed. We were a strong support on the healthcare payment system analysis bill. This is a bill that we were pretty active on for 2 years in a row now. It requires the Colorado School of Public Health to conduct an analysis to determine cost and feasibility of implementing a universal healthcare payment system in Colorado. Again, this is a bill we supported for the past couple of years. It's passed this session. A bill that we strongly opposed, modifications to Colorado Open Records Act. This is a bill where we did offer up a lot of amendments. We were pretty active in this, well, I would say very active in this bill. And, we started out in an amend position and wanted to see some changes that we thought would promote public's right to know, promote transparency, ensure that people are getting their core requests in a timely fashion and that it is affordable. Unfortunately, we just could not move the sponsor on this one. So this was Kathy Kipp, and as a result, we felt strongly enough about the concerns that were in the bill that we just didn't feel like we could get on board with it if the amendments were not going to be incorporated. So we ultimately decided to take an opposed position on it. This is one of the bills that passed. but was ultimately vetoed by the governor. And Linda will tell us a little bit more about our advocacy around that effort in a couple more slides. Senate Bill 276 was a bill that we supported to protect the civil rights of individuals based on their immigration status. That bill passed. And on the other end of the spectrum, one that did not go in accordance with the direction that we would have liked it to, SJR 21 would have committed the General Assembly to fully and fairly funding public schools. This was a bill that we supported, but ultimately it just didn't progress in the process and ultimately failed. On the House side, I would say that we probably saw more bills ultimately go in the direction that was not aligned with our position, which is frustrating. But again, I would remind that one of the key reasons that we issue action alerts is sometimes we know that bills are facing opposition. We know that there are soft spots in support, or certain legislators or certain regions of the state that are not on board. So we issue the alert to really try and mobilize and give that bill the extra boost that it needs. Sometimes those stakeholder mobilization efforts are really effective, and sometimes they're not. We kind of had a mixed bag on this. These are bills that originated in the House. We supported the Independent Ethics Commission jurisdiction bill. Unfortunately, it did fail. One that we were frustrated with because it was a veto that we didn't want to see happen was fairness and transparency in municipal court. It was a bill we supported. The governor had concerns about it and ultimately vetoed the bill. We spent a lot of time discussing 1169, which is a housing development bill that would allow for some eased requirements to facilitate the development of housing on unused land owned by faith-based entities or educational institutions. It's a bill that we thought took a creative approach to really kind of looking at infill and promoting density and providing much needed housing on unused land that often is situated in the middle of our communities, close to schools and services and all that sort of thing. But ultimately this bill did not pass. On the flip side, 1309 is a bill that protects access to gender affirming care. We were supportive of the bill and happy to report that it did pass. Legal protections for transgender individuals is a bill that we ultimately supported, although I will note that this is another one that we tried to very closely follow the stakeholder conversations and concerns of the lead advocacy organization on this bill, in this case, One Colorado, to make sure that we were supporting them in their efforts to get some amendments that they thought were necessary to protect progress for transgender protections that have been made to date. So we were originally an amend on the bill, but once the amendments that were being sought were successfully incorporated, we changed our position to a strong support and are pleased to have this bill passed as well. One bill that ended up being a little disappointing was a requirement that the General Assembly explore a lawsuit to examine the constitutionality of Tabor. It's a bill that we're very supportive given all of the fiscal problems Tabor causes for Colorado. But this bill ultimately did not progress. We'll get into the details of this one in a little bit more deeply. Model provide a bit of the discussion on that in just a minute here. Something that we sometimes do, but we did a lot more of this session, was issue action alerts around federal concerns or federal issues. LAC really took a broad view in our advocacy this session to kind of keep a close eye on things that are happening at the federal level, things that, would negatively impact us as an organization. There was a lot of things happening that we felt like we needed to speak out on. So in coordination with guidance from LWVUS, we did issue a number of action alerts around federal issues. One was to oppose the SAVE Act. Another was to oppose cuts to safety net programs. One to really kind of mobilize our membership to voice support for protecting Medicaid funding. This is obviously a very present debate right now as the federal budget is being debated. And this is one that I want to point out. We often see really good response rates and engagement around the action alerts. We always kind of take a look at that because it's helpful to know, how much of our membership is responding to an action alert. And it's not uncommon for us to see over 100 engagements. So when we send that out, we know that there are people across the state, oftentimes 100 or more people, that are acting on that and contacting either their state or, in this case, federal representative to either voice concern or support for a measure. In the case of protecting Medicaid funding, I think it's the highest one that I may have seen as long as we've been tracking, is there were close to 1,500 engagements around that one. So definitely a lot of voices, being heard on this, which is fantastic. We also had a lot of concerns about, what's happening with DEI issues or initiatives, and the discontinuation of a lot of that programming. So we issued an alert, to speak in favor of that, and a really kind of broad and I don't know if this is philosophical is quite the right word, maybe so, alert that, was trying to speak to just the general approach of how we believe government and our democracy should be functioning in accordance with the Constitution, our constitutional framework, and separation of powers and respect for the powers of the various branches of government. So we issued an alert to kind of speak to that in a very broad sense, that we continue to abide by that constitutional framework. Okay, so governor vetoes, I have talked a little bit about those. The 5 that have occurred so far, we actually only had positions on 2 of them. And I did just kind of mention them, so I won't go into too much more detail right now. But just important takeaway here is that Senate Bill 77, modification to the Colorado Open Records Act, was vetoed. We consider that a win. 1147, fairness and transparency in municipal court, was vetoed. We weren't so happy about that one. The governor has until June 7th to veto bills. So, we may see a few more before the time runs out. You can monitor the actions that the governor has taken on all the bills that were passed this session through the tracker. You'll see that's a hyperlink there. I will note that when I looked just a little bit before this presentation started, it's not 100% up to date, but I think that it will be soon. And certainly as kind of a way to check where everything has landed, once all the dust has settled post June 7th, I think that tracker will be a good resource to go back and see if anything else has been vetoed. Referred measures are a specific type of measure that runs through the General Assembly. In this case, the example here that I have, or the one referred measure that we know about, House Bill 1274, Healthy School Meals for All program. These are measures that the legislature approves that will place a question on the ballot for voters to ultimately decide. So in Healthy School Meals for All, it's actually 2 measures that are going to be, or 2 ballot measures that are going to be referred to voters in November of this year. The 2 pieces of this are what's referred to as the retention measure. And that would allow the state to basically keep and spend the additional money that was collected that went beyond the revenue collection estimates that were made in 2022 when this measure was originally authorized by the voters as Proposition FF. So when the estimates were made, I can't remember what the original estimate was, but the amount of revenue that was actually collected here exceeds that original estimate by about $11 million. So there's going to be a request on the ballot to allow the state to actually just keep that money and dedicate it to the program. Then the other piece, the other ballot measure associated with this referred measure is what's referred to as the expansion piece or the expansion measure. And it would increase Colorado taxable income and income tax revenue, which would then get credited to the Healthy School Meals for All cash fund. I think probably everyone is at least somewhat familiar with this program, but essentially is what's doing is basically just what it says. It's providing no-cost meals to students in participating schools, regardless of income. So it's not a means-tested program. And the thinking there is that, it's important to, ensure that any student that needs meals during the day is able to receive them. And the reason that it's not mean tested is really kind of associated with stigma. That, there's some research that has indicated that if only certain students are eligible for the program and the meals are limited to those students, they often bypass and won't take advantage of it. So it's much more effective to just open it up to all students. But participation in the program has been a lot higher than was originally estimated. So, the goal is really to increase the funding that's available so we can ensure that we can preserve it going forward and keep that program in place. The other piece that often comes into place in Colorado is TABOR. The state is actually generating enough revenue, collecting enough revenue to fully fund this program, but because we're hitting those TABOR caps, and the state can't redirect that funding without permission of the voters, there's a lot of money available that could go to the program, but it's not able to with our current structure under TABOR. So there's the need for the additional ballot measures to get permission of the voters to both keep that additional money that was raised since 2022 and then seek to raise a little bit more, well, probably not just a little bit, but ensure that the program has the funding that it needs to provide meals for students across the board. Okay, so now I do want to turn to just kind of a handful of bills. Some of these are, kind of high priority and, things that really had a broad impact. But they were also just kind of selected to give you a flavor of the various things that LAC works on and really kind of the broad range of topics we address. It in no way touches on every issue area that we cover bills on. For those that may not be aware, LIC functions in most cases in issue area teams. So we have a group of people that focus on elections and voting bills, a group of people that focus on environmental and natural resource legislation, a group of people that focus on housing. So these were just kind of selected to show a range. Getting ahead of myself. They, like I said, by no means, comprehensive in terms of the subject matter that LAC covers. But I do have a link if you want to see everything that was worked on. That'll come a little later in the presentation. But I do want to make sure that we take a moment to talk about the Colorado Voting Rights Act because this was a big priority for us this session. This is a bill that LWVCO was heavily involved in the development of, working on for a couple of years now, and some pieces of the bill for even longer than that. So, we weighed in heavily on the content, kind of identified some of the problems that could be solved, all based on the idea that we know that we have a really robust voting system in Colorado. Our election system is really strong. Colorado has really led the way in voter rights and election integrity, but there's certainly room to improve. And we know that voter access is not, that doesn't play out equally across the state. There's pockets of people across the state, certain populations that experience more barriers to voting than others. And so COVRA was really intended to reinforce the protections and build on the protections that are included in the Federal Voting Rights Act, but then also create some new protections and processes that will ensure voter access in Colorado and ensure that there's recourse in case voters are experiencing barriers that are not permitted. The other piece of it is that, unfortunately, we are continuing to see the federal VRA kind of chipped away and diluted. We don't really expect that to stop. So it really necessitates Colorado stepping in and ensuring that our voters in our state have got, the rights and protections provided under the federal VRA, but that we're also, being forward-looking and, identifying some of the pockets of problems that continue to exist in the state. So one of the new protections that's created via COVRA is specific to LGBTQ voters, and ensuring that the right to vote is protected for eligible voters who are confined to county jails. The bill also creates access to multilingual ballots in local elections for the first time, and this will provide additional access in 17 city elections, impacting 1.37 million Coloradans. So some of you may recall several years ago, LWVCO was very involved in the legislation that created multilingual ballot access at the state level. This is really just seeking to ensure those same voter access provisions to ensure that individuals who speak a language, English less than very well, a common language other than English less than very well, are able to review and vote a ballot in a language that is most comfortable for them. Of course, there's provisions around that, thresholds that have to be met in order to have those multilingual ballot provided to specific communities, but COVRA is expanding that access quite a bit, so that's been exciting. COVRA also ensures that voters with disabilities who are living in residential facilities are provided with information about their right to vote, access information, location of the SPCs, that sort of thing. So really just trying to make sure that voters in those residential facilities have got that information readily available to them. In terms of enforcement, Colorado or COVRA empowers the Colorado Attorney General and civil rights groups such as LWVCO to enforce voting rights if there are instances where violations are occurring or alleged violations. So this offers voters, a recourse to ensure that they can stand up for their right to vote, and that the state can ultimately address any barriers that may exist. And then the second provision is something that we're really excited about that I think I'm going to start referring to as the league provision. COVRA also establishes a statewide database where there will be information that's publicly available about state and local elections, specifically precinct level elections related data to help election administrators really kind of dig down and address ongoing voter participation issues, voter access issues in certain areas or among certain populations. But also, and very importantly, this level of information will also support the work of Colorado's independent redistricting commissions. And I refer to it as the league position because this provision of the bill would not be in COBRA had it not been for some of our members who had the expertise and knowledge to know that Colorado was not collecting the level of data on elections results that allowed for these things to happen. So this is one of these classic league issues, I think, where we have got really specific expertise and knowledge about how something is working and can come to the table with a solution that honestly most people aren't thinking about. So this was a huge win where this provision is concerned. And this is a celebratory photo. Mom, go ahead.
Andrea, we have a question whether there are, oh, Beth answered it. Is there a plan to expand COBRA next year? And Beth said not yet, but Beth wants it in the Constitution.
Yes, that would be fantastic. And, you know, as I started out mentioning, we know Colorado has got a really robust elections and voting system, but there's always room for improvement. So as you take a look at COBRA, as we start to see it implemented, if you notice things that can be done, either to tweak things to more successfully implement it in terms of, you know, its legislative intent, or just other things that still need to be done to protect voter access across the state for all eligible voters, we would really encourage you to bring that to us because, you know, we can continue to work on this and continue to make it better. So this
also,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, for those of you who are sharp-eyed, in this picture, Jen, our mathematician league member, and Andrea and Beth and Jane and Katina, so all our staff and our key league member all got to attend the bill signing and be in the photo.
Yeah, it was a happy day, and it took place on a Monday, which is always a nice way to kick off the week.
Beth points out that Celeste was also huge in helping get it passed.
Right.
I didn't do very much. I just talked about it a lot, but I didn't. But thank you for the shout out.
Talking about it a lot is huge. And Celeste, you were identified applications for COBRA and upholding the spirit of COBRA because it hadn't passed yet, and all kinds of other legislation that you were working on. So, you know, that was extremely helpful. And we know that like looking at that real life application in other legislation as we continue to lobby into the future will be really important. So we very much appreciate your insight and your work on that.
Thank you. That is true that I did mention COBRA a lot in my testimony on other bills. And I want to say that while Jen was there, standing next, Jen is wearing the pinkish shirt and the black pants, and she's standing next to Junie Joseph. And
Julie Gonzalez.
And on the other side is Julie Gonzalez, but Junie Joseph is our state representative, and she was saying, I wonder what kind of legislation I should do for next year. So we have ideas, and we're going to meet with her.
I love that. That's exactly what we want to hear. And I will talk about this a little bit more in just a second, but COBRA, I think, provides a really good example of how once the bill is passed and signed, that's not the end of the road, because implementation is a huge piece of it. You know, there's a lot of details. Legislation obviously will, you know, set the framework and the requirements and that sort of thing, but it doesn't always get at every little detail. So a lot of that comes out through rulemaking process, you know, real life implementation sometimes looks a little bit different than, what we may have thought when the bill was moving through the legislature. So continuing to monitor is really important. And we know that Jen and our LAC voting and elections team will continue to do that. So like I said, there may be tweaks that we notice in this legislation or other pieces of legislation that we were supportive of, that we need to hold the state accountable for implementing in a way that is true to the legislative intent. And if additional legislation is required, that's something that we can point out. Or if it points into the direction of new things that we should be pursuing, these are all really key reasons why we need to stay involved in the interim, and why we want to continue to follow the implementation of bills after they're passed. So that's all I'll say about that for right now. We'll talk about interim activities in just a bit more in a minute here. I do want to move on to a package of bills that was really significant for Colorado, bills that we were very supportive of. These three bills that you see here on the slide, they are referred to the Reproductive Care Without Borders bill package. And, you can kind of see, just, looking at the bullet points here, that they're doing a variety of things to ensure that people in Colorado have access to reproductive care, pregnancy-related services, emergency medical services that may include abortion care or other reproductive health-related care, and that providers are protected. We know that there's a lot of attacks on providers in the realm of reproductive health care, also gender affirming care. And so, we saw successful efforts here, fortunately, to strengthen Colorado's SHIELD law to protect patients and providers. Senate Bill 130 requires emergency centers to ensure that individuals who need emergency care receive it without discrimination, delay, or first inquiring about their ability to pay. And then Senate Bill 183, very importantly, makes conforming amendments to the Colorado statutes to codify Amendment 79 into state law, and then also requires HCPF, Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Finance, to cover abortion services for Medicaid and CHIP Plus program participants using state funds, and for public employee insurance plan members, individuals like teachers and that sort of thing. So some really important strides were made through this package. I think I saw Leah on the call. I know Leah is very immersed in this legislation. I just want to pause a minute and see, Leah, if there's anything that you want to add here. Not to put you on the spot.
To put me on the spot.
You decline if not.
The bundle was really important to just make it abortion accessible in Colorado. One of the things that everyone is concerned about is that it may be legal in Colorado and has been for a long time, but it doesn't mean it's accessible for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of barriers to getting abortion care, just like there are barriers to getting regular health care for people. Then the barrier just gets that much higher when it's abortion care. So these really help both providers and patients, all of these bills. So that's mainly the thing I wanted to just emphasize, is accessibility is increased by these bills.
Thanks, Leah. I love that line, and I know that you incorporated that into testimony, that you know, just because care is legal in the state, if it's not accessible, it doesn't mean much for the people that need it. So accessibility is extremely important. So some really good strides made here. Fantastic work by Leah and the healthcare team on this package, as well as a bunch of other healthcare related legislation. Completely different topic, but I do want to highlight Senate Bill 276. This is a bill I mentioned earlier that we supported that protects the civil rights of individuals based on their immigration status. It's doing a whole host of things with the idea that you know, the state is just looking to kind of come at this in different ways to ensure that there are protections against civil rights violations based on that immigration status. We know that, you know, individuals, you know, legal permanent residents, you know, people in mixed status households. There's a lot of fear right now. There's increasing discrimination, a lot of uncertainty. So, you know, this is a measure that we were really pleased to see pass. It's expanding data privacy protections. Really importantly, it's prohibiting local law enforcement from honoring ICE detainer requests without a signed judicial warrant, meaning they can't, law enforcement can't additionally detain someone that they have for another reason without another warrant specific to an immigration issue. And then it's making an extension of a current law requirement, which prohibits a state agency from disclosing personal identifying information related to an individual's immigration status unless it's required by federal, state, and state law. This would extend that down to local government and political subdivisions in the state. So it's really kind of coming at this in you know, a few different ways, all with the idea to ensure that people's civil rights are protected. Senate Bill 63 is another bill that we've been active on for a couple of years
And
now.
Andrea, back to immigration. Cindy Sestrich asked, with the exposure of federal personal data, does Medicaid have any protections for immigrant information in Colorado? And I don't know, if Medicaid in Colorado covers what kind of immigrants it covers.
I'm trying to dust a thought off in my brain because, you know, there's I can't remember what the name of the program is. I want to say it was just passed last year and recently enacted where certain healthcare services are extended to non-citizens in Colorado. And I know that as that program, that basically like a Medicaid expansion kind of thing to that Colorado did to reach individuals who are not citizens. I know that once it got rolled out and it was being implemented, there was a lot of fear about whether people should sign up because they were worried about disclosing information. And the state has ensured that there are protections around that. So, I mean, I know that hearing that may not go far enough for people to like feel totally comfortable, but Colorado has made you know, effort to protect personal information so people can take advantage of the services that are available to them that they're eligible for without fear of, you know, immigration you know, repercussions. That's probably not really a full answer to the question, but I guess I would have to follow up to be a little more precise in my answer, but my sense is that we do have protections in Colorado that prohibit that disclosure of information. Peggy and Shauna were the individuals that took the lead on this bill. I don't know if either of them are on the call tonight, have anything to add, or anyone from the health group that might be able to answer the question a little better than I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm here.
So-
Peggy.
Oh, there's Peggy.
Yeah, I'm here. Yes, and whatever parts of Medicaid are available to unauthorized immigrants, or any immigrants really of any status. Well, the unauthorized immigrants, that if they get Medicaid, that is state funds and not federal funds. And so the state is forbidden from sharing that data with the federal authorities because it's a state expense.
Thank you, Peggy, for that clarification. That's helpful.
And Health First Colorado says starting January 1st, 2025, children and pregnant people who live in Colorado who meet income and household income eligibility requirements, immigration status does not matter.
And Maude, that's specifically the program that I was trying to remember the name of, because I know the state has tried to be proactive in making assurances to people in Colorado that are eligible for the program that their information is, like, their immigration information is not shared. And to Peggy's point, this is state money. So, state law is providing some protections there, preventing disclosure. Again, I think there's a lot of fear around this issue. So, I realize that people may still be uneasy, and I don't know how that's impacted uptake on the program, but, there are protections in place, and Peggy's clarification is really helpful in kind of distinguishing how we can do some of that when some of these supports are, funded exclusively through state money.
And I think each state has its own software system for handling Medicaid enrollment, and I don't think the feds have access to that. I think the interaction with the feds is just about money and not about individuals. Not positive. So.
Well, thank you, Peggy, for weighing in on that, and Maude for that additional information. Hopefully that answers that question. Okay, moving along to Senate Bill 63, the library resource bill. This is an issue that we've been involved in for a couple of years now. And we're really pleased to see this bill passed. As everybody knows, there's been a lot of, I guess, movement, you could say, about wanting to see certain materials pulled from libraries, and, just kind of a, intent to, control some of the information that may be politically unpalatable for some people. So there's been controversy around requests that libraries pull access to certain materials. This bill is focusing specifically on public schools. That includes the state charter schools as well, to create written policies that would govern the process for potential removal of library resources. It does provide that any person that's making a request must be a parent. You'll notice that is broadly defined. So, it's intended to, be inclusive there. But if someone is raising a concern about materials, they do have to be a parent of a student who's enrolled in the public school. And then there is a requirement that the item that is being considered for removal, that request or that assessment can only be made every 2 years or more. So somebody can't, continuously make the request and really kind of abuse this process. Also provides that the library resource can't be removed based on identity of the author, illustrator, or creator, or the topics or opinions expressed in the document. I don't know if Kathy Wilson is on the call. Kathy, I'll just pause quickly to see if you want to say anything about this. Kathy's the LAC lead on this bill.
She's out of the
No,
country, so
she's out of
she's
the
not joining.
country. Never mind. She's definitely not here. But anyway, this is, you know, this was a bill that we felt really strongly about. So we were pleased to see it be passed and some processes be put around this. Senate Bill 77, I've mentioned a couple of times, modification to Cora. I will not say any more about this and just turn it over to Linda because she has worked extensively both on the bill itself and the veto effort. So Linda, would you mind jumping in on this one?
No. So this is the second year that the sponsors have tried to pass this bill. It extends the time that clerks have to reply to a Cora request, and we all recognize that the clerks need more time to respond to these requests. But our problem with the bill was that while it helped the clerks, it increased barriers to information because it made Cora requests more expensive by taking away, normally, right now, as the law is written, you get 1 free hour for each Cora request, each hour of record search. And then your $41.37 an hour kicks in with the second hour. Well, this bill took away that second free hour if you filed another request within the same 14-day period on the same topic. It created classes of requesters. They left the press as defined by the Shield law to the original 3-day turnaround for the requests and 7 days in extenuating circumstances. But an ordinary citizen like you and me, they could extend the time they were asking for an extension of a time of up to 10 days. So that would actually be 15 days or 3 weeks. They could extend your reply time. And if the clerk, in the clerk's judgment, if you were asking for the records for pecuniary gain, then you have to wait 30 days for your records. It just left everything at the clerk's discretion. And we opposed the bill because it asks citizens to accept longer request times, but it does nothing to address the high cost of a Cora request or a request that's delayed or ignored. In our amendment, what it offered was we would accept these deadlines that they wanted, but we would like to have put in place, if they delayed the request, for each day delay beyond the deadlines they set in this bill, that they had to refund or take $1 or an hour fee off of the final bill. And we tried to amend it several times in committee hearings. They wouldn't accept the amendment, so we opposed it in the end. And the governor vetoed the bill because he didn't like the classes of requesters, and he felt that this was just increased. There's been a tendency in Colorado over the past few years to make government more opaque, less transparent. And he saw this as just another barrier to transparency. I think that's all.
May I
things
just point out, sorry,
Mhm.
that there were more than 50 lobbyists in support of that bill and only 2 against. The League of Women Voters of Colorado and the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition. And the underdogs won.
Yeah, it's exciting because not only was it us pushing for a veto, but then there was an attempt by the General Assembly to override the governor's veto. And so we were working alongside with Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition to, lobby individual legislators to really express the concern here and that, really push them to hold the veto and not vote for an override. So, Linda was calling up individual legislators to educate them as to our view on this and just the broad concern. And it was exciting that, this was successful, that the veto held. And what we think that there will be more movement around this issue, and certainly there are modifications that could be made that would improve, but we will continue to weigh in on it so it gets done in a way that we think is appropriate and protects transparency. So thank you, Linda, for that.
We have a question in the chat, and I don't know if we know the answer. What are comparable charges for open records requests elsewhere?
I don't know charges. I do know that someone at one of the hearings testified that some states there aren't charges because it's built into the they feel that it's just part of the custodian's job. So I don't know.
In Nevada, at least for the state, it used to be, I think, the actual value of the time of the employee or employees working on it.
Yeah. I don't know.
And Nevada employees were not very well paid, so that
Oh,
was not
okay.
a big number.
Yeah, it seems like it could be really expensive, but
Yeah.
I guess it depends.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that information, Linda. We're going to move on now to House Joint Resolution 1023, the Tabor constitutionality lawsuit. I will just pass this on to Maud so she can give us the lay of the land here and maybe a preview of what might come next.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Andrea. I'm going to give a shout out to all the work that different LAC members do in different coalitions because, we are all stronger together. And the league in this case was part of a large coalition led by our partner, Colorado Fiscal Institute. This House Joint Resolution would have required the legislature to sue in state district court, saying that Tabor is unconstitutionally restricts the power of the legislature, and therefore is unconstitutional. If Tabor is the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, which restricts the state legislature in many ways and still restricts some local governments. If the measure is passed and the suit had won, it would have vanquished Tabor. The resolution, after many hours of testimony for and against, passed out of committee. Our coalition was asked to try to convince House leadership to bring the measure to a floor vote. The league did an action alert to House leadership, but they never allowed it to come to the floor for a full debate and vote, unfortunately. there is talk of maybe a more narrow ballot measure next fall, not this fall. I don't know if there's going to be a push for more legislation, or or the next step is going to be the ballot. So there are many aspects to Tabor. One is that it requires a flat income tax rate, that Governor Polis, for all his money, pays the same income tax rate as the barista who makes his coffee on the way into work. And Tabor does not allow for a higher tax rate on those at the top. And that might be something that we can work on in the future. So we'll see. But
Thank you.
it's certainly handcuffs the legislature, because the legislature cannot raise taxes. They can create and increase fees, but they cannot raise taxes. They can cut them, they can't raise them. If the federal government slashes Colorado's funding, there's nothing that the state legislature can do to make up for it. So back to Andrea on that cheerful note.
Oh, thank you, Maude. Okay, well, I jumped ahead and started talking about policy implementation when I got really excited about COBRA. I just want to revisit that because we know that a lot of our LAC members do extensive work over the interim, which is super important. But I want to kind of provide some resources and some links here that will not only be a tool to LAC members that are engaged in that interim advocacy, but also just our general membership too. I'm not sure, some of you I'm sure are very aware that you can actually apply to have a seat on the various boards and commissions that Colorado creates to guide or work to implement legislation. If you go to the link at the top there on that first bullet, it'll give you a list of the various boards and commissions and whether there are any openings. So if there's a topic or a board or commission that is dealing with an issue that you're really interested in, citizen involvement in those processes is so important, and your voice is super, super valuable. So I would certainly encourage people to, maybe look at that from time to time and see if there's anything there that, aligns with your interest and knowledge, and maybe consider applying to be on a board or commission. We talked just a little bit about Senate Bill 45, the healthcare payment system analysis that will be conducted by the Colorado School of Public Health. There's another component in that legislation that creates what's referred to as an analysis collaborative that's housed within HCPF. Analysis Collaborative is kind of a strange name, but it was specifically named that at the request of the governor's office because they did not want it to fall within the boards and commissions. So it has a more streamlined appointment process. And the bill provides for, I want to say, like 20 categories of individuals that they are seeking to come and have a seat on this collaborative that will provide, it'll serve in an advisory only capacity to, kind of share information and perspective with the Colorado School of Public Health that will ultimately inform their analysis. So again, it's another opportunity for citizen input that is really, really valuable. If you're interested in the topic, you can take a look at the legislation, or feel free to get in touch with me and I can provide you with the list to see if you happen to fall into any of the categories of people that they're looking for to sit on that body. Following rulemaking hearings is another really important thing, because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, the legislation will set out the framework, but then it's up to the department to create rules and processes for actually implementing the legislation. Like, really, what are the nuts and bolts of making this thing work? So the rulemaking hearings are really important to pay attention to, particularly as we track the implementation of bills that we've supported, to figure out how the department or whoever's in charge of implementing it is going to you know, carry out that function. So this is an opportunity for us to weigh in. You can provide comments, but also just to be knowledgeable about what that process is going to look like, so you can continue to observe, and we can really serve a watchdog function to ensure that legislation is getting implemented in a way that's true to the legislative intent. You can also sign up for Department of Regulatory Affairs notices through the link that's provided here. We've talked about, you know, some of our stakeholder meetings and partner organization collaborations. That is hugely important, and I know there's a lot of LIC activity in that over the interim. That is a time, the interim summer, fall, leading up to the next legislative session is really kind of the time when stakeholders for a certain area or subject will get together to talk about, you know, what legislation might be needed in the upcoming session and kind of start to develop that. So it's an opportunity to really weigh in from the beginning. So if there are particular areas that you're interested in, familiarizing yourself with, you know, the groups that work on those issues can be a really good way to participate from the starting point. And we do have a list of LWVCO partner organizations. I should have linked it here, but I didn't do that. But that is something that it's available through the members document pathway on the website. And then one of the other key things that everyone can do during the interim is to follow the proceedings of both the JBC and the interim committees. In this case, 2025, it's going to be select interim committees because as I'm sure everyone's heard, the state was struggling with the $1 billion budget hole. So the General Assembly was looking to cut expenses wherever it could. And they passed Senate Bill 199 to suspend the interim committees for the 2025 interim for select committees. So there are going to be some committees that continue to meet, but it's a reduced number. The JBC is one, but then there are a few others too. So it's limited. Checking the website for schedules, General Assembly website, through that link there would be the way to kind of figure out what's actually going to have hearings this year. For the limited number of committees that will be meeting, the scope of their work has been narrowed a bit. They have been limited to requesting no more than 5 bills be drafted for consideration, and they can recommend no more than 3 bills for introduction in the 2026 session. So it's a smaller number of bills, less work for legislative staff, less expense. One of the things that I think is disappointing is that the Colorado Youth Advisory Council, which we try and really tune into the legislation that they research and the bills they recommend each year, because it's, you know, some really very relevant and timely issues affecting students and youth in Colorado that are put forward by youth sitting on the council. Senate Bill 199 removes their ability to recommend bills or to introduce bills. So that is frustrating, but we are pleased that the committee will continue to still function and you know, play a role in the legislative process, even if it is limited. And then lastly, there are some additional resources on this page that I want to draw everyone's attention to. The Legislative Action Report webpage has got the list, the master list of all of the bills that we followed this session in all of the areas. I by no means touched on all of the topic areas that LAC covers. So you can go in and take a look at the 125 bills and kind of see the positions that we took. And the webpage also has got the testimony that we provided, as well as this is also the place where we will be posting our legislative wrap-up article that is forthcoming. The Where the League Stands webpage on the LWVCO site includes the state and national program books that guide all of our advocacy work. And then we ran across an interesting article that was recently published by the Colorado Sun that talks about 101 bills that were debated by the legislature that you should know about. Some of these are bills that LAC lobbied on and followed. Others are just things that may be of interest. So if you're interested in a really global view of some of the highlights, that would be a great article to refer to. And then a couple of housekeeping items, I guess. We are pretty much always looking for new LAC members. The broader participation we have, the better. We like having representation from all parts of the state. We meet via Zoom. You can testify via Zoom. So distance is certainly not a barrier to participating in LAC. And we're also finding that as kind of happens after a few cycles, that our coverage in some areas starts to get sparse. A need for expertise in specific subtopics within a larger issue area can really kind of come to the forefront. So we would love to see new members come on board, anyone that might be interested in the LAC to work on fiscal issues. We could expand our healthcare team. We could potentially expand our education team. That is an area that gets a ton of legislation. Maude, Linda, what?
General Assembly and local government, housing, childcare, children's support systems. I think you said healthcare, gun safety. And Linda, are you looking for another person for news access and literacy, or are you okay there?
I think we're okay, but if somebody has an interest, join us.
Yeah.
I think education, did we mention education?
Education, yeah, could probably use somebody as well. We had another request. I tried to put some of the links, but it was, can we find the links somewhere? And Celeste has her hand up.
I just want to say that just because you're on a team doesn't mean you have to cover every single bill on the team. I don't want people to think, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to do every bill. We cover the ones we have positions for, that we care about, that need our help, those sorts of things. And we don't have time to cover all the bills.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There were over 600 bills introduced, and we took stances on about 125, and that's with 35 Legislative Action Committee members. Andrew, is there some place on the Legislative Action Report where we could put, are there some links that we want to, like important links, like to the governor's tracker and some of the other links in your presentation?
Yeah, I think we could add that. I was going to include it in the wrap-up article, but
good idea.
We could also,
yeah,
find a permanent place to put it too.
The tracker is really a short-lived thing, so.
Yeah, that article is it's really written by all of LAC because everybody prepares issue area summaries for their topic. And I'll coordinate all of that along with some of the information from tonight's presentation and get that posted on the website soon. And the links that we've been talking about will be there too as a resource. Moving on to the next bullet point, Linda, did you want to maybe just give a brief description of the open meetings work group and maybe make a call for volunteers?
Yeah. So I think everybody may know that we're part of Team Transparency. It's a coalition that is working to reverse Senate Bill 24157, which exempted the General Assembly from the open meetings law generally. And the league is leading the group that works on the open meetings law. And we're looking for people who are interested, who want to join us. I put the link for the working group. I said to contact Beth or info@lwvcolorado.org. I didn't put mine in there. I think that's enough probably. But so if you're interested in transparency and working to improve our open meetings law for the General Assembly, come and join us.
All right, thank you, Linda.
Mhm.
Sorry,
And-
may I jump in and
Please.
just say this is the opportunity to be involved in a potential citizen initiative, including, I mean, being on the ground floor of a citizen initiative regarding the people's right to know. So it's actually pretty exciting work. So I hope that some or all of you will take this opportunity. Thanks.
This is Tony. May I say something about that?
Yeah.
Well, we were involved in the redistricting, writing of the legislation. We were there from start to finish. And look at what happened. We have 2 independent redistricting commissions. It was a stellar process. It was entirely a democratic process. And I'm so proud of the work that we did on that. And you can be just as rewarded for participating in some of these other opportunities.
Well said, Tony. That is a great analogy for what's possible here. So yeah, it's a really exciting opportunity. And yeah, I mean, the group really could use League voices. So please give that some consideration and let us know if you've got any questions. We would be happy to talk it through. For questions in general about anything we've talked about tonight or advocacy stuff or bills that we didn't talk about tonight, please feel free to follow up with me or Linda. I didn't put Maud on there because her time on the board and her role as the co-director of Action and Advocacy is winding down. Her board term is almost up. So I just want to give a big thank you to Maud for all of her amazing work on behalf of LIC and LWVCO. Fortunately, she's still going to be an LIC member, so we get to benefit from her work and her expertise still, but she will be missed. And huge thank you to Maud.
Huge
Well-
thank yous to Maud.
Our state league has probably one of the best staff in the country. And LAC could not do what it's doing without all of you folks, Andrea, Beth, Katina, Jane, and of course, all the many volunteers on LAC who bring all their expertise and time and hard work. And Kathy Ebersberger is going to be fabulous. And the other thing is I've had wonderful co-directors, Kathy Wilson, Thalia Oster, and Linda Hutchinson. So it's been a great ride. And I'll still be on LAC.
Yes, I'm very thankful for that. And it has been a great team. And it's going to continue to be a great team. Linda is really just kind of starting up her tenure. So we get the benefit of her expertise and work for some time to come. And she will be joined by the new co-director of Action and Advocacy, Kathy Ebersberger. Kathy has already jumped in and is kind of starting to transition into the role. So we're super excited. Kathy's done an amazing job, with so much of the Jedi legislation. I don't know how that team followed as many bills as they did. And then with the task force work, so Kathy will really be bringing some amazing perspective and expertise to the role. Kathy, is there anything you want to add?
No, just I thank Maud for everything she's done for LWVCO and for the Arapahoe Douglas League, and I hope I can do half as good a job. And so thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Kathy. All right. That is all. That takes us to the end of our night, and we really appreciate you all joining us and your engagement. Thanks again to the work of LAC, and please reach out if you have questions or if you're interested in LAC, joining the team for next session. We are happy to chat and kind of give you a sense of what that looks like. So have a great night, everyone.